Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending on what side of the pond you're on. And welcome to Across the Pitch. My name is Phil Kennedy, and I'm here with my co-host, Tony Robinson, where we have an episode that usually I say it's special or extra special. I mean, all of our episodes are special because I get to spend an hour with my good friend, Tony. But
suck up. That's nice.
I'm going to call this extra special today because, we're going to talk about some realities today. I'll just start with that. But before we get into that, I do want to wish a big congratulations to Accrington Stanley's Mo Sangare, who will never have to pay for a pint in his home country of Liberia ever again, as he scored a tying goal against South Africa in the 92nd minute. So this was a stoppage time equalizer for Mo Sangare in the AFCON tournament for Liberia against South Africa. So congratulations to Mo. That had to be the thrill of a lifetime to put on his home country shirt and be able to score a equalizing stoppage time goal like that. I mean, that's what he will never forget. So congratulations, Mo.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say a libation for Liberia. That would be a tongue twister if you had a couple of drinks, wouldn't it? But that was what a strike, wasn't it? What a strike that was.
It was brilliant. I mean, and that just tells you, I mean, even as difficult as a season as it has been, this Accrington Stanley team, still it has plenty of things to get you excited about, plenty of great guys, talented players, and, this is still a team that you want to root for. This is a team that we want to see be able to turn things around. And I mean, Tony, I think that I told you the other day after the match against Exeter on Saturday, it was a 5-0 defeat. And realistically, it could have been worse than that had it not been for some quality saves by Jensen. And I really said, I mean, in 5 years of regularly watching just about every match on iFollow, it may be the poorest match that I've seen us play. And it just really, it felt like a low point. Tony, did you get the same feeling from that match?
Yeah, I think, well, as far as performances, I remember that 3-0 home loss to Lincoln, which when everybody just sort of mailed in the performance, and then losing, I think, the performance, those matches, and on Saturday was not good. And I think the heartbreaking one was the MK Dons one, but and to be honest, I mean, we didn't expect to get a big result at Plymouth. I mean, they are a very good team, and but it's just the way that they capitulated in the second half. It made the changes, the subs, and give up 2 quick goals, and after that it was. It was not pretty, and I think, I mean, so the result was, in the second half was written in the books, and I think it was just a question of people hoping that it didn't get any worse. But I think you and I said when the man of the match, in our opinion, for Stanley is the goalkeeper, who has led in 5. I think on the surface people would say, well, you're nuts, but like you pointed out, he made some. If he didn't ever make those saves, it could have been.
He let 5 in, but he also kept 5 out. I mean, there was 10 shots on target, and they were all quality. I mean, one of the problems is we were giving entirely too much space And one of my main concerns is this, and this is what you were talking about earlier. If we lose to Plymouth Argyle, Sheffield Wednesday, Ipswich, even Bolton, I mean, these are massive clubs with massive budgets where we just don't have a high expectation. Against an Exeter City, I mean, this isn't a team that you necessarily expect that you're going to go in and beat, especially on the road. But they're a mid-table club. They're now in 11th place after that win against Stanley. And to me, the telling number is this. We lost 5-0 to Exeter. And Exeter's goal difference is now +5 on the season. So Exeter, coming into the match, their goal difference was 0. They had allowed and given up the exact same amount of goals. So that tells me Exeter is your average League One team. This is your exact middle of the road team. This isn't top of the table. This isn't bottom of the table. This is as average of a League One team as you can get. And to go out and go down 5-0, that tells us we are well below average.
Well, and I think when you talk about sort of an average team, I think it's a good time to sort of look at salaries in League One, and then we can sort of see, based on the research that I've found, how the salary range relates to the table, and I think it would show how we have overachieved in every season we've been in League One. When you look at Exeter, as I say, this is information that I've got from a website called Capology, and it's for the 22-23 season. So I'm just hoping
this is a great find on this, Jenny.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at Exeter, their weekly payroll is £27,000. Average per player is 1,050. Now, I think that average can be a bit misleading because you could have some young players that are on a contract for only a few £100 a week, and that might bring the average down. But their annual payroll is 1.4 million, according to this website. Now, you look at Stanley, and our average weekly salary, according to this website, is actually a little bit higher. It's 28,654, but basically in the same ballpark. A budget, our annual payroll, I should say.
More players, but less per player, I think.
Yeah. Yes, because I think average per player for us is 924. So I think we have more players on the roster, but their annual payroll, that's a good point, Phil, because if we say our average payroll is 1.49 million pounds and there's 1.42, you say it's similar, but if they've got 7 or 8 less players, then it means that our payroll is actually lower per player, doesn't it? Well, it shows with the average, doesn't it?
Yeah, so our average is, I think the average per player is a good one to look at, because ours is 924 pounds a week average per player. Theirs is 1,050. So their average player is making about 100 pounds a week more than ours. And so, I mean, they're one of the lower end ones. I mean, if you go and you look at the top of the table, and I'm not even going to go to the massive clubs, but I mean, if you go to like a Plymouth, for example, right now their average per player is 2172 a week. Their annual payroll is 3.1 million. Their weekly payroll is 60,000. So Plymouth is spending more than twice as much per player, more than twice as much per week, and more than twice as much per year as Stanley or Exeter.
Well, yeah, I know when you look at these teams and the money involved, and you can understand why it's so hard to beat these teams, because I know it's 11 on 11 when you're on the pitch, and for us to get results against some of these teams that are have got when they're higher salary, you are assuming that the quality of the player is higher, and I think it is connected. May not always be the case. You might get a player that's overpaid, but I would say that's it's probably more leaning to the fact that they've got, and one of these teams have more depth. I'm looking at Sheffield Wednesday. Their weekly payroll is £233,000. Average per player is £10,000. Their annual payroll is $12,122,000. I mean, how when you look at that, how can Stanley compete against a team like Sheffield Wednesday? They just can't do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, and so with Sheffield Wednesday, I mean, they're a massive club that has fallen down from the championship, and they're probably a one-year deal in League One. But that's one of the things specifically that makes League One particularly difficult, is that every year, generally, you're going to have 2, 3, maybe even sometimes 4 of these really, really just massive clubs that fall down, and then, like you said, you're just competing against them. And just to quickly go back, I did look at, and right now Exeter has 26 players under contract. Stanley has 31 players under contract. So Stanley has 5 more players for roughly the same payroll. So, I mean, it's definitely, this is one of the largest squads that Stanley's had. And in some ways, I think that may be kind of one of the criticisms of this year's squad, is that maybe we've gone for quantity over quality in some cases a little bit too much. I think a lot of that has been necessitated by injuries, where we've had to bring in guys we necessarily wouldn't have needed to, and then of course that's money that gets spent on filling in for an injury replacement. That's going to impact us. I think a big thing, and this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, is that there's an old saying that goes in football where they say you don't win with kids. And when I look at Accrington Stanley this season, or even actually maybe the past 2 seasons, compared to years past, especially if you look back to like 2018, 19, 20, is that we just seem to have a significantly younger squad. And I understand the reasons for that. I mean, you're trying to build players up for the future. You're trying to develop guys and be able to sell them off, things like that. But I think that what we're really missing more than anything is just experienced players. I mean, we don't have, and this is something Darren Woodhead has brought up, we don't have a lot of guys that are in like that 25 to 31 age range. We also, one thing that it seemed like we used to always have is what I would call like a journeyman veteran type player, guys like Scott Brown, for instance, a guy who has been around, is definitely a solid League One, League Two level player. That's what he is. He's not necessarily trying to go and play in the Premier League, a veteran League One, League Two players. I mean, I think we've sold off a lot of those type of guys too, like Cameron Burgess, for example. Butcher, he's a guy that scored against us. I mean, there's so many guys that we've former Stanley players that have scored against us this year. It just seems that a lot of quality has walked out the door over the past few seasons. And I don't necessarily know that it's that we haven't replaced them with talent. I think that it's maybe that we just haven't replaced them with enough experience.
There's a lot to be said for that, Phil, what you're saying. And I know I think it's harder, as you can see from those payrolls, to keep a journeyman on the squad if he can go to another team on a similar role and make a few hundred quid more a week kind of thing. or over a month a period or whatever. I think with the with the injuries and yeah, I think with the experience, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because if you have players, experienced players, and you reference Scott Brown, they may be able to make more money at another club in a similar role coming off the bench, and if they're at the end of their career, they're gonna go and do that, and you can't blame them for it. Which and then the younger players that they brought in lack the experience, and then when your experience or your star players go down, you have a gap, and you're having to fulfill the roles by players that don't have the experience. So in a sense, they gain experience, but and I think you have to look at the now is this comes to the reality of the situation we've got to look at it as if Stanley could go down. I mean, I think there's a lot of people and especially some groups that are already on that bandwagon that we're down, and I'm not as optimistic as I was, but I still have that positive feelings that if we can get a result against Port Vale, we win our two home matches that we have, and then the last two matches I think is Cambridge and Oxford. I think if we can get 4 wins out of that, Phil, I think we can, have an outside chance. There's a real chance, I should say, of us staying up. Now, it all depends. We have to catch Oxford. I think they're the teams that we have to catch. So if they go in the tank and we can get some results, and I'm just trying to look at I know Port Vale. And this is one thing too. We play Port Vale, but we don't play them until I think Good Friday. So they have a week off. So I think which is going to be good because players can recover. We can get some other players back, and they can have almost a mini training camp is that they can sort of work on things. And I think this weekend off might be a positive. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that the weekend off or the rest could have come at a better time, because I mean, this is going to be a week where some things are going to need to get sorted out. Hopefully, we'll get some guys back from injury. Hopefully, goalie can have a long talk with the guys in the locker room about just playing smart football, because I mean, I think if we could just play smart football, get away from making the unforced errors, get away from taking bad fouls, get away from the red cards, things like that, that's going to go a long way. That being said, we've got an uphill battle in front of us, because for one thing, we no longer control our own destiny. So even if for example, if we were to win all the rest of our games and Oxford and MK Dons win all the rest of their games, we would still go down. So, I mean, this is a situation where we're going to need other teams to lose. That being said, that's going to happen. So, I mean, if we are able to take care of business, then we should be able to stay up. I mean, right now, we looked at the odds before we started recording, and Skybet does not like Stanley's chances. Right now, you have to bet, if you're betting on Stanley to get relegated, you have to bet $8 just to win $1. So that means that Skybet thinks that there's at least an 80% chance that Stanley's going to get relegated. And honestly,
well,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, to be honest there, Phil, I think Stanley's picked for relegation every year by a lot of these betting companies, and they're more picked for relegation than they are for doing anything else. So I know they're sort of linked in that favor, but I think what we have to do is at the
beginning of the season, you could take that with a grain of salt. But I mean, at this point in time, my
point is that they always Yeah, I know they're saying that now, but my point is that Stanley's always. You ask any pundits, and they always pick Stanley to go down.
Yeah.
And eventually they're going to be right, because they'll say, "Oh, we told you so." But how many years have you been picking them to go down? But I think one of the things I just looking at is we have to match Oxford's results, and then we play them
last week. I mean, I suppose. Well, actually, I think they have a game in hand on us. Let me double check. So yeah, they have a game in hand on us. So if we win out and they win out, it still wouldn't matter. I mean, not that that's likely to happen, but they do have a game in hand on us. But I mean, here's what my main concern is, kind of looking at it. So I mean, we have Port Vale coming up, who are 16th in the table. Obviously, that's going to be a game that we have to win. And then we obviously have that match at Oxford, the last game of the season. But if you look at the matches in between that, which ones do you think that we can win? Because there's some tough ones.
Well, I think we got to look for a result against Fleetwood at home, and I would say let's hope we could get a draw against Peterborough. I think that's at home too, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. Peterborough's at home, Fleetwood's at home. Yeah, and then so now we have away at Sheffield Wednesday, away at Bolton. You can just about write those off. Portsmouth, we have away. That's going to be really, really tough. So, I mean, so out of 8 matches, I'm going to say Sheffield Wednesday away, Bolton away, and Portsmouth away. If we get something great, but let's not count on that. So that leaves us.
Yeah. Portsmouth, I can see is going to draw. Okay.
I'm just saying, since it's away, let's go ahead and push that off. So then that's going to leave us. That leaves us our next match. April 7th is Port Vale at home. Then we have on April 15th we have Fleetwood at home. April 18th we have Peterborough at home, and then the last 2 matches of the season we have Cambridge at home, and we have Oxford away. So let's say we'll need to beat Oxford. That's going to be a true 6-point match. Let's say we beat Port Vale, and then maybe Cambridge, and a draw at Fleetwood, or draw against Fleetwood. So that would be maybe 10 points would be. So let's just run through that. So let's say we beat Port Vale. That would be 3 points. Call Sheffield a loss. Fleetwood would say we get a draw. That'd be 4 points. Peterborough will say maybe a draw, 5 points since that's at home. Call Portsmouth and Bolton a loss. Those are both away. And then, so if we could get a win, so it's really going to come down to those last 2 games, at home, Cambridge United, and then away at Oxford, because so we could get 11 points if we got those outcomes, which would put us at 46 points for the season. Looking at the table right now, Lincoln is in 14th at 45 points. I think 46 points would be enough to stay up. But I mean, that's a tall order, because that's basically, we're going to say we've got 8 matches left. We're going to say 3 of those we're probably not going to get a result out of, and then we're going to need 3 wins and 2 draws out of the remaining 5 to get us at 46 points, which I think would probably be the number to stay up.
Yeah, and I think I can't disagree with your numbers, but I think it is achievable. And as I said, until we're mathematically eliminated and put in that bottom 4, we can't get out, then I'm going to like a lot of fans, or supporters, I should say, I call them supporters because they're the ones that are going to be following Stanley no matter what happens this season, and if they go down, they'll still be coming to watch the matches. Some fans to meet sometimes, and some of these ones that you see on social media that are really taking a rip at the club, the players, and the coaching staff. If they're used to being seeing Stanley in League One, and if they go down, they may drop off in their following, or they may just think they could bounce back up. And I want to talk about that in a minute, but I just wanted to look at Oxford's fixtures quickly and to see they play away at Peterborough. They play Sheffield Wednesday. They have Port Vale. They have Bolton. They have Portsmouth, Barnsley, Cheltenham, and Forest Green, and then and then us. So they've Cheltenham, Forest Green are teams that the matches they'll look to win, and I would say the rest really, I don't see them getting a win out of the others.
Well, here's what I look at. I mean, if we're going to do the same thing with their schedule that we did with ours, their next game, Peterborough away, probably a loss. And then they've got Barnsley away on April 22nd. That's probably a loss. Sheffield Wednesday, even at home, that's probably a loss. So they've got 3 games. And then even Bolton at home, that's probably a loss. 4 games that are probably going to be an outright loss. Port Vale away, Portsmouth away. I mean, they've got a lot of away games, which is certainly going to hurt. Portsmouth at home. But let's say Port Vale away is a draw. Let's say Portsmouth home is a draw. They've got.
Phil, I think just to. Yeah, but I seen the maximum that I see them getting, and that's if they beat us, is 9 points. So I think they're going to be well within. I think that's going to come down to that last match, because I don't see them getting points in the next few matches. So I think their hope is we got to hope then they play Cheltenham that they lose. And Forest Green, they're playing Forest Green Rovers away. So it's going to come down to us and Oxford, I think. But I think one of the things
just to kind of go back to just add the so let's say they lose to Peterborough and Sheffield, that's still 0 points. Let's say they get a draw away at Port Vale, that's 1. Bolton a loss. We'll say draw at home, Portsmouth 2 points. Loss to Barnsley.
I don't agree with that.
You don't think they get a draw at home with Portsmouth?
No.
I mean, now keep in mind we're looking at best case scenario, the same thing I did with Stanley. I'm saying best case on that. That best case scenario, I don't think it's impossible they get a draw at home against Portsmouth.
Okay.
Let's just
on that one.
Okay, well, like I said, we're saying best case scenario.
I don't want to spend. Let's not like. I mean, we don't have to spend. I'm just trying to. The point is.
I'm just trying to add the numbers here.
But I think the point is it's going to come down to the last match, and you can't find more than 10 points. I mean, we're 2 points ahead of us, and I'm only giving them 6. Even if you give them 8 points, that's still going to take us into the last match. Because if we're 2 points behind them in that last match, or because our goal difference is gone for a shit kicking. So the only way that we're going to do it is we've got to be within. We've got to win the match when we go there, and that's our lifeline, and I think that's the bottom line. So I know what you're saying, Phil.
Well, that's exactly what I was getting at. Is so say they get 1 point at Port Vale, 1 point at Port Vale, 1 point at Portsmouth, and then they beat Cheltenham and Forest Green. That's still only 8 points, and yes, does put us into the last match. So we're actually going down the exact same path there.
We just the journey we didn't agree on, the destination we did. I think one of the things that we have to look at too, 2 things that I just want to cover to sort of the last 2 things we should talk about, and that is if we go down, what is the team going to look like next year? And number 2, if we go down, is John Coleman and Jimmy Bell as their tenure come to an end. I think there seems to be some rumblings, and I know some of the one group in particular, and there's some negativity, sorry, that comes out. But there's a name being kicked around a little bit. Liam Richardson, that played for Stanley and was a manager for a short time, and was at Wigan, and has done a good job wherever he's been. His name's been mentioned, and I know there's some pressure. I got talking to people, and not mentioning any names or anything like that, but I know there's some pressure on John Coleman to keep them up. But I think the only way he would go is if we go down, and then there's an agreement where he leaves. I don't see him being fired just for what it services to his club. I'm saying if we go down and he leaves, it would be in a way that
on
he would
his
be
terms.
Yes, yeah, mutually.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Because I think the only way that him and Jimmy and Sean Doolan would not be the management staff next year would be if they didn't want to be. I mean, I think that it's just it doesn't make any sense on any level to move on from John Coleman just because of one bad season. I mean. There, for one thing, if you were to look and you were to pick and choose at every single thing that has gone wrong this season, are there things that maybe John Coleman could have done differently? Are there mistakes that he's made? Absolutely. I'm sure that if you walked up to John Coleman right now and said, would you have done some things differently this season? He'd say, hell yeah, I'd have done some things differently this season. I mean, that's football. But at the end of the day, there's so many things that are out of his control that just I mean, to fault the management staff with the amount of injuries alone. I mean, this was always going to be a rebuilding year to begin with, and then to be hit with the injuries. I mean, we've had a lot of players that have left recently, many of those not on our choice. These are guys that wanted to leave, and then you have a guy like a Dion Charles situation where you don't get the return that you should get because of the situation. I mean, there's just so many things that have worked against Stanley to just say, oh yeah, it's the manager's fault is far too simplistic. And I mean, for him to have the success that he's had for 20 years, he hasn't just forgotten how to coach overnight. I mean, no. This is go ahead, Tony.
Yeah. I just I'm going to say I think this is the last time, and I know for me anyway, that we're going to mention that Dion Charles name again. I think we've let's put that one in the archives and bin that one. But the one thing that I was wanted to mention is that from our standpoint is that we're not advocating, and I want to make that perfectly 100% clear, that we're not advocating John and Jimmy leave even if we go down, because I think I can speak for all of us that at across the pitch, Phil, is that we want to see, if we go down, we want to see John and Jimmy be there to bring us back up again. So I just want to make that clear. The one other thing that it's
there's not another management team in the world that I would rather have. I mean, we even joke around about things like, what if Alex Ferguson decided he wanted to come out of retirement and come to Stanley? I mean, as funny as that sounds, and as fun as that sounds, what the heck does Alex Ferguson know about League One?
Well, and then with all, we've joked around and said, but even Alex Ferguson couldn't have got this team with the number of injuries into the playoffs or in the top 10. And I mean, we have to have everybody healthy. And you can see from the comparison of the salaries that we have to have everybody, as I say, healthy and performing at their best to compete with the teams in that top 10. I mean, when I say top 10, there's this League One. There's so many teams that are the top grouping that are championship level teams, and I think this year more so it's been where it's been a split in the league. It's almost like in the Premier League where there's the top grouping and then the bottom 7 or 8 that are fighting to avoid relegation. There's the Barnsleys, the Plymouths, they're all on big salaries, Sheffield Wednesdays and Sunderlands. So it's, everything has to go our way to compete.
Sunderland finally
one of the things. Yeah, I mean, ask Sunderland how hard it is to get out of League One. One of the things that we, need to keep in mind, and it's been mentioned, I think Andy Holtz mentioned it, about the drop in income. League One team receives £677,000 per season. And in League Two, you get £472,000. So that's £205,000 pounds you don't get, which is probably about 8.5 weeks of salary for players. So it is significant. And you have to look, I mean, you mentioned earlier on, and I think it's a good point, is that the quality of the loan players. I don't think you get loan players from Premier Leagues if we're in League Two like we would have done this year. And if you look at the loan players that come in, and it's an important factor, is that our top wage earner, like on contract, is Ethan Hamilton, but the actual person that's making more money and we're involved in the salary is Aaron Presley. So that's why he's being played so much, because he's the money he's on, and we're obviously paying. I don't know the percentage of the salary that we're paying, but he's listed as the highest paid player at Stanley. But if you look at the contracts, and we talked this with Ethan Hamilton, we said, and this website shows he has 1 year, but he told us the club has an option, so he would be back as long as they can afford his salary. If they can't, then they have to ship him out. So there's a real chance that he could be gone, not because he's out of contract, but because we can't afford his wages. And when you look at the number of players of contracts expire at the end of this June, there's a lot of them. Harvey Rogers is mentioned, and he mentioned that in his interview with Joe Pritchard as listed as end of June, but we don't know how many of those players have an option with the club as an option. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be hard to say, but you could see the likes of Mitch Clark, Ethan Hamilton, just to mention a couple off the top of my head that could be sold because we just can't afford their wages. And I think you've got to look at some of the older players, what their roles are going to be if we go down. And I know there's a couple of players been taking a bit of stick, and I don't think it. Well, I know. I just say I don't think. I know it's not right. No, I don't agree. And that's Seamus Keneally and Sean. Seamus, when he plays, he really is, to use an American phrase, the quarterback.
It's still the heart and soul of this team. And that's part of the reason it's been such a struggle this year, is because he's been in and out of the lineup so much. And, it's funny is every year we bring in a defensive-minded midfielder and we say, is this going to finally be the guy that becomes the next Seamus Keneally? And I think part of the thing is we either haven't found that guy or maybe we find that guy, like, for instance, maybe Matt Butcher could have been that guy and now he's moved on. And I think that is, to me, when I just look at, we just, it's so many of the players that are in that 25 to 31 age range. Cameron Burgess, I believe he's in that age range, that I think that if we, whether we stay up or get relegated, that I think one of the focuses next year needs to be to try to find more players that are in that age range. I mean, even if it means having a smaller squad, uh, and going for a little bit of quality over quantity. Maybe if it's like you said, we need to sell off a couple of guys. I think one thing is because we didn't make a lot of moves in January, and we do have that money from the FA Cup run, that we do have a bit of a war chest for next year for the summer.
Well, I think, but it comes down to what we are going to be able to pay on salaries. And I think if just by the reduction of what the team receives being in the lower league, I think that's going to impact the wages. And we can't really say when we look
essentially
at that.
That's the FA Cup money, $200,000. So I mean, if we lose the
I mean, if you had all the money they received, that they got in from trophies, and we did that once before, right? I think and the TV revenue and the Papa John's and the FA Cup, you're probably close anywhere from 400 to 500,000 pounds that were.
What I was getting at is that if we go from League One to League Two, the reduction in TV money would basically be all of the money we made off the FA Cup would be the difference.
Yeah, I mean, you won't get TV money next year if you League Two unless you get into an FA Cup match or something like that, and you'd have to get through to the third round or something of that nature. But I think we're going to see some of the top players, if we go down, could go because of the wage situation. And as I have mentioned, those two names, there could be others. I think we don't know until a lot of these contracts, if they have an option by the club, how many of those players will be back. Because there's a lot of players go out of contract that are young players that could have an option to stay. But I think, and the other we mentioned is Seamus, and I think Seamus has still got a very vital role to play. I think his position as a defensive midfielder allows him to play a little bit more, a little longer, because he's not playing in that wing back position. So I think I do see him being a valuable asset next year. Whether he starts all the time depends on how many players come back under contract, but I still see him as a valuable role. I think the one player that role is going to change and has been getting some stick is Sean McConville, and I think he's playing more and probably would have got subbed and got some rest in certain games, but we just didn't simply have the people to replace him. But I think his now has to be more,
especially with Joe Pritchard going down. And I mean, I think Joe Pritchard is a guy, I mean, he is literally one of my favorite players. He's been on the show with us. He's just a top guy. And man, I just feel for Joe, because I mean, if he was a guy that was going out and like having hamstring pulls all the time or something, it'd be one thing. He'd say, the guy's just not training right. But it is just one major injury after another, whether it's I think it was an Achilles this time. He had the ACL, and man, I mean, if we could just get a full season out of Joe.
Joe Pritchard couldn't get lucky in a whorehouse with a fistful of 50s. Just couldn't. He just couldn't do it because he just had bad luck, and you can't sort of, his contract runs out, but I mean, there's not a lot of teams probably going to line up to sign him because of his history. And I mean, there's a good chance you could see him back. But just to finish my thought on Shulman Conville, I still think he has a role. I just don't think it's on the wing. He's not he doesn't have the pace now, and I'm not blaming that on age, because he did have that Achilles tendon, and that does create a really, that's a tough one to bounce back from. But I do see him as a number 10. I don't see him doing 90 minutes. I think he's the guy that you could get 60 minutes out of, or if there's close game, if there's back-to-back games, so to speak, like a Saturday and a Tuesday, I could see him coming on for 30, 40 minutes kind of thing, because of his value with his set pieces. But, you've got young guys like Liam Coyle and that young Cork lad they signed, and Dan Martin, I think, has got a bright future. As long as he stays. No, he signed.
Oh, I thought he was alone.
No, he's actually he's under contract, I think, for two. Actually, he's under contract to 2025. Is Sebastian?
Oh, excellent! I've liked what I've seen at him.
So I think, and if you've got Nottingham back, Rich Bagley, you've got you can sign Harvey, and hopefully they will. If Mitch Clark goes, then you have to find a replacement there. But I think there is enough there to look at a decent team if we do go down, because Matt Lowe's under contract. You've got Cody that I like. I think he just needs to get some game time, so I think he could be a threat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's definitely shown a lot of improvement this year. Yeah.
And that young lad, Leslie Adekoya, he's under contract for 2024. So I think, it's and I know we're talking about if we go down to League Two, but I think the team would look different. I think there'd be a couple of named players that wouldn't be around, but I think because of the players that we've seen come through the under 23s, we should be able to have a decent team. And I do want to reiterate that I still think, based on what we've talked about, that we beat Oxford down that last game, and we'll stay up, and it'll go down as a great escape up there with all the best that John Coleman has done, and then we'll be singing his praises again from the top of the town hall in Accrington.
But I'll tell you, Tony, I mean, looking at the remaining matches that we have and that Oxford has, it's certainly an old football coach that I used to have, an American football coach, but he used to say it's a doable task. And staying up for Stanley, it's a doable task. It's not going to be an easy task. It's an uphill task, but it's a doable task.
Yeah, and I did read one of the comments I thought was quite comical, is that the adage, it's not over until and this is just I'm repeating it, I don't believe it, is that to be politically correct, is it's not over till the fat lady sings, but she's warming up, is a comment that I saw, and which she could be in the wings practicing, but we're not ready to bring her on the stage and sing it's over. So what was that big? It's not over. Anyway, it's not over till it's over. Yeah, no, it's not my
Yogi Berra. It ain't over till it's over.
Yeah. So anyway, Phil, I'm
pizza into 4 slices. I don't know if I can eat 8.
No, I know. But you know what? I think it was the way we lost on Saturday and the way we lost against MK Dons. And obviously then things have sort of been, there's been slanging matches and people making negative comments. At the end of the day, we've done an admirable job in League One, and I still think we will be in League One next year. If we go down, then I want John and Jimmy to be the guys on the sidelines next year. I wouldn't, like you said, I wouldn't want to put. I don't think there's anybody else that knows the club and the players well enough that could do a better job if we went down.
Tony, I think there's only one thing left to say. On Stanley.
Stanley on.
Cheers.
Thanks, Phil. Cheers, mate.
Thanks, Eddie.